Welcome to another episode of That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. I am Kelly and my co-host is Mr. James.
How are you, my friend?
I am doing fantastic. How are you?
Good. It's nice weather today. Nice and sunny.
It's a good day for a podcast.
It's always a good day for this podcast.
It's a good day. I say that because we have yet another intriguing guest.
We tend to have those.
Yes. We are going to be speaking with Dr. Mark Weisman, and he is actually a Nordic shaman.
Yeah, Nordic shaman.
Yes. And so he is somebody who uses his abilities really to help veterans deal with their issues, but as he says, ancient teachings to solve modern issues. And so he uses that whole Celtic Norse heritage, everything, the magic, everything about the culture to help veterans go through, with their trauma. And I find it incredibly interesting, the stuff that this man knows.
Oh, yeah. We were talking to him, yeah, he was like, and it's funny because you look at him and he does look like a Viking Santa Claus dude,
Viking
but man,
Santa Claus.
Yeah, he is an intelligent dude.
Yep, very much so. So I just say we get right to it.
Let's do it then.
Welcome to the podcast, shaman, Nordic shaman, maybe it's Celtic Nordic shaman, Mark Weisman.
Well, thank you for being here with us, Jacob. We appreciate that.
Oh,
I just wanted to get us started with...
Not Jacob, it's Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
it's okay. I've been called worse.
Well, let me start again then. Jeez. All right, Mark. So, welcome, Mark.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry about that. So I wanted to get us started with asking you, what brings you here to That's Some Crazy Shit?
Well, as I was, my team was looking across one of their platforms that they search for, and found that you guys have a very similar platform, if you will, of understanding that I honestly preach. So the match seemed to be made for us long before we had the opportunity. So,
well, tell us what it is that you do.
Well, all honesty, I am a spiritual advisor. Predominantly, I work a lot with guilt and shame, particularly with returning veterans and of combat assignments to help them move past the irreconcilable the differences between what they experience in a combat zone and what monotheistic practices have taught since the beginning of time. Just helping them reconcile that, move past the guilt and the shame, and enjoy a happy life.
So when you say spiritual advisor, what tools and resources do you use?
My own mind. I'm a channeler, so I can channel spirits. I communicate with them frequently. I use mostly ancient techniques, particularly Celtic and Norse, to practice healing, and with 50 years of living and a lot of counseling that I've done both for other people and with the Landvetti for me to understand life. I just offer a wisdom to help move those things out of our operating memory and help folks enjoy life.
So, Mark, what is the... Oh, excuse me, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the term spiritual advisor only because I'm not certified in anything. I'm a shaman, by trade. And so, the Psychological Institute and all those folks don't really recognize religion and particularly not mainstream religion as being a psychological resource that our veterans can use, even though it's proven over and over and over and over and over to be successful and works. They just failed to see it that way.
What is the attitude of the veterans towards your approach? Are they receptive to this?
It's funny. I have a couple of quotes that former patients have left, and they talk about, firstly, a lot of veterans come to me with this idea of grandeur, if you will, in that, here's a Viking, or a Norse, and it's kind of that image about that. And they don't really, and it's not until we meet once or twice that they kind of get the idea that, I'm not here to sell the whole Viking product line. I'm here to sell a solution that will work for you and your family to get past this. And so I've had hundreds of individuals over the years, and many of them contact me even today and telling me, their accomplishments and, the latest thing. Had one just the other day wrote me and said he was thrilled beyond recognition as he got to meet his daughter, who was born, I want to say, a month ago, and how just in such a different place he is now. And so he was real thrilled. So I think it's a matter of common sense. So I think a lot of people come into working with me thinking I'm something I'm not. But then when they realize that what I am is a straightforward, answer-seeking individual whom I don't accept a lot of excuses. I want people to do the lift. I want people to do the work and get to a better place, because I know it's out there for them.
So, Mark, are you a Viking?
I am not. And here is the thing. Vikings were never a people. It was an act. So when the Danes or the Norwegians or the Icelanders or any of those groups went on raiding parties, that action was referred to as Viking. It was not the people. The people were, as I mentioned, the Norwegians, the Swedes, the Icelanders, the Danes. Those were the cultures and the people. Viking was just a, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, almost a job title.
Gotcha.
So I am not Viking, I am a Dane.
So are the beliefs more along the lines of paganism?
That paganism is really a Christian word. And essentially it meant anyone who doesn't subscribe to our belief. The actual paganism and the heathenism that we saw in pre-Christian Europe, again, these were descriptors used by outside individuals. I celebrate my culture, my heritage, which is Celtic Norse. If that doesn't, if you need to call me a pagan or a heathen, okay, I'm good with that. Just don't call me late for dinner. That's all I ask.
And so do you find that you get maybe when you're trying to, you said that when you help the soldiers, does religion really play a factor in it for them to have you help them?
It does. And we really, as just general society, does not understand the influence that religion has on us, even if we're standing on a mountaintop and screaming that were atheist or agnostic, to a couple more Christian words there. Even if we're that, there is a spiritual interface that we have every minute of every day. Whether we choose to believe in it, use it, or not is absolutely irrelevant to the reality. So getting these soldiers to understand the influence that they've had and the influence that they have going on right now, and working with those is paramount. So yes, as far as where they come from, it's really a mixed bag of fruit, because you get almost two schools of thought, in that you have the one group of soldiers who are very, very Christian or Muslim, very, very orientated towards that practice. And then you have the other group of individuals who have kind of, they'll never use the word atheist or agnostic, but they are, by Christian definition, and that they kind of put it off to the side, and they swear up and down that it's had no effect on them, when in fact we know very differently. But they learn that like at session 2 or 3.
Well, God, you have to think, the way our culture's set up for how many hundreds of years, it's been influencing people, and it's so ingrained we don't even know it's doing it sometimes.
Right, and you're exactly right in that. Firstly and foremost, the United States is formed on a Christian principle. The Puritans are the ones who began the whole process of making the laws, establishing kind of ground rules and operating procedures, if you will, for the country. But what a lot of people don't recognize is that your spirituality, your introduction, particularly to monotheistic beliefs, actually begins before you're even born, because your mother is communicating one way or another. Your father's communicating with you. Other people in the nearby vicinity are possibly communicating, whether consciously or not. And so there's a lot of that going on. And some of that sets the stage for when you do come into fresh air, that you've got some preconceived notions kind of stuffed back there in the brain that you will then operate on for the rest of your life.
I like
so yes,
that.
It is what it is, and we find it in any across the spiritual spectrum, if you will. I mean, monotheism doesn't have the corner on the market by any stretch. If a mother is a practicing Wiccan, or even some of the South African tribes, these beliefs are being kind of fed into an unborn child before they actually draw air, and it sets them up to then function once they are born. They there's these kind of set ideas and thoughts, and more importantly, the thought processes are then set in motion. So it's very critical to everyone who's born, I guess.
Well, and then, people say, they may not agree with it, but then it's like, but there's studies that show music will affect children, the different, if a mother's a smoker, it's like, yeah, these things affect, you can't say, well, they do in this case, but they don't in that case. It does. It really does.
You're right. And one of the things that we've actually seen time and time again is it's not as much, while those ideas are certainly wrapped in there, so are things like emotional control. Being able to keep yourself in check, if you get really angry or really upset, can you kind of rebalance? Can you reset, if you will? That skill, that ability, that starts before we're ever born, because we feel mom's chemicals inside the body. Her pH balance is coming off. Her hormones are going left, right, up, down, in and out. And it sets an emotional current of the brain that then we interpret obviously as emotions, but the fetus then is looking at their parent going, okay, how do you get that back under control? How can you kind of put that back in the box? And so it's up to mom and dad to be able to almost unconsciously teach that before the child reaches birth, because that'll start. And then obviously once the child is born and they're out in the world and they can see mom and dad, now they've got some visual sensory input going on, which is then going to validate what they remember from in utero. So
that's just fascinating.
It is fascinating.
It really is. And if you think about the chemistry within your body, and one of the things, and we'll talk about in a minute, is the book that's coming out that I've written. And what in the book, I talk about a couple of different factors that really set you up for the uniqueness that you are. And one of those things, and we've seen studies, there are several studies out there that says from the time you're born to the time you leave your physical body, you will alter your DNA. You will alter the building blocks of who you are. There's a lot of factors involved in that, but suffice to say that there are some of those building blocks that you can alter with your emotional chemical balance in your body. And you can set a bar that then we see children being born that are more high strung than others. This is why, because genetically now you have set that bar. And so the child that's born kind of inherits that. We know that from the expression of the FOXP2 gene in the genome, in the human genome, where one of its major functions is to pass the genetic coding from parent to the child. Okay, and so we have this genetic coding that's handed to us, and then on top of that, we then have this hormone game that we've got to play. Something triggers us. That's the psychological word of the day is triggering. But something incites a response, and that alters your body's chemistry because your body starts releasing a level of those hormones that are in your body, right? And so it alters the pH balance of all of the connections from, and I'll use touch as an example. Your fingertip touches something, that signal has to transfer all the way through the neural system to your brain, okay? And at every place and there's millions of them, at every place when you gap between these nerves, you have a chemistry that can alter the signal going from one to B. This talk about blind rage is one of those examples where we see emotions crushing a sensory input into the brain and altering the data. Ultimately, you may not remember being in a blind rage. Why? Because all of that chemistry damaged the input from your fists, if you will, all the way up to your body. So you won't remember those because that chemistry killed that signal before it made it from your knuckles to your brain. Because of the emotional and the chemical flow that's in your body, it has a tendency to do one of three states. It can not touch anything and allow the sensory input to go from wherever it started to your brain as knowledge or little bits of memory, which then stacks together as knowledge. So zero input, you can have that signal damaged, so you only get part of it, or you can have it just deleted, just dropped. So those are kind of the three things. Now, this explains why 16 people watch a car accident and you have 16 different recalls of that event.
Yeah.
That's why, because each of these people have a different genetics that are then releasing a different set of these hormones, which then creates a different chemical cocktail between your optic nerve and the storage, the brain, the memories. So that's really not to use the title of your show, but that's some really crazy shit.
That is a crazy. I mean, because you think about it, and then you think about the variables. If one person's maybe closer and hears something more than another person who may see something at a different angle and releases different chemicals. I mean, that is some crazy shit.
It is, and it's inherent. I mean, there's at the expense of security here is we really have no control as individuals of what we're born with. We're kind of given this collection of genetics. Here you go, and then we're given the chemistry, and then it's kind of up to us through our physical lifetime to figure out how to manage all that, how to put everything in, and be able to, again, as I mentioned before, kind of put everything back in the box if I need to, or conversely, if I need to spool things up. Is this a fight or flight kind of thing? So all of those things come into play.
I just keep picturing for myself this mad scientist with these beakers and just, we've changed, we need to put some of this in there.
I don't have a white lab coat anymore, so I have to rely on other people's research here.
So Mark, tell us about the book.
The book is due out in May. It is called The Turn to Final. The book is modern day spirituality, and it talks about how to be a better spiritual entity. While I address some of the negativities of the practices that we've seen over the last, particularly 2,000 years, I talk about it's okay for you to be any theism that you want to be. Whether you want to be monotheist, polytheistic, whether you want to be agnostic or even atheist, if that's what you choose, understanding that it's okay. And that's a big thing for me, because I see a lot of conflict. We've seen for 2000, no, I guess they came around about the 7th century. So from 7th century till now, we've seen a constant conflict between the Nation of Islam and certainly the Christian cloth. We've seen a lot of conflicts between them. We've seen conflicts between the Muslim and Judaism, which is there around in the Jewish people. We also see a lot of conflict now happening because people out in the world right now are really beginning to look at the Norse pantheon, the Greek pantheon. Even I have two friends who are practiced and study the Egyptian pantheon, because they have found that, like myself, they kind of maybe looked at monotheism originally and realized that there wasn't that fit. And so the book kind of talks about your theology is something that's very intimate with you. As an example, you don't run around the street and say to everyone you meet, "Hey, hi, my name's Joe. My wife's name is Connie." Right? We don't do that. In much the same way, my relationship to a deity, to the spiritual realm, is my business. The only time it becomes kind of a public thing is the actions at which I provide based on that knowledge, right? So if I start doing all kinds of stuff that's against the law, well, we need to reevaluate, right? So that's what the book, one of the primary goals that I want the book to handle. The second one is, as we just talked about, all the chemistry and all your genetics. in understanding that we are a perfect work of art, just the way we are. We're perfect. With the amount of genetic manipulation that's happened throughout human evolution, as well as other impacting fluids or factors, we're perfect. We're in a great place, and what we just need to learn is coexistence. And we need to understand. I mean, ultimately, our mission, if you will, here on Earth is to learn empathy. Because as we move beyond the physical plane into a spiritual realm, we have to now provide empathy to communicate with the people back here on the physical plane. Now, having said that, sounds a little off. Having said that, we need to do that empathy without the benefit of our physical sensory input or our physical chemistry. So when we can get to that place in our lives, we've kind of accomplished our objectives. So the book kind of talks about all of those pieces, and hopefully what I hope it does is it helps people to be better spiritualists, not monotheists, not Christians, not Muslim, not paganist, not satanic, not any of those words, but spiritualists, understanding their own spirituality, understanding how they're affected by other spirits in the neighborhood, so to speak, and be able to help them live a better life. So that's the book in a nutshell. And like I said, it's due out in May. I'm about 7/8 of the way through it. I think I should let everybody know that much of the ideology within the book almost seems like it stems from the indigenous beliefs. I have studied quite a bit with indigenous, particularly the Navajo in southern Arizona. And so I have a lot of those kind of theologies. But then as I kept going back further and further and further and further in time, I just found so many commonalities between the indigenous Native Americans, which stems from roughly, give or take, the Mongolian steppes, which is the Altai area. We see yokai from Japan. We see Aboriginal people from Australia. We see the West Africans, which established Vadao, which obviously moved to Haiti and then ultimately here into the U.S. My history comes from kind of a culmination between Celtic, which was pre-Christian Southern Europe, and the Sami people. Sami people being up on the north side, coming south through Norway. And again, indigenous beliefs, a lot of indigenous beliefs and spirituality, kind of getting away. Most of them focus around a monotheistic belief where you have a great creator, if you will. And so they are monotheistic at their core. But they really embraced much more of a spiritual connection.
They really do, don't they?
Yes. And so you as you read through the book, I talk a lot about my spiritual influences and my spiritual communication. I talk about what I've been taught through almost a decade now of channeling. And so kind of put all that together in a book, and hopefully, like I said, it teaches people to understand their real objective here on Earth is empathy. And empathy starts with compassion. Compassion, again, starts with coexistence.
Do you have a website?
I do. I'm glad you asked. I have a couple of them. Actually, the major one, which is kind of the center of all of our universe, is https:// AK Úlfhé nar, And let me spell that out because everybody asks me. AK is for Alaska, obviously. Úlfhé nar is spelled ULFHEDNAR. Úlfhé nar. And just a backstory of what Úlfhé nar is. Úlfhé nars were compared in the Norse sagas and the Norse culture as being special warriors. They were kind of like the berserkers, which everybody's very familiar with. Úlfhé nars were a step above them in that they also had a lot of shamanistic and more magical properties, where they communicated and operated with a group of spirits referred to by them as the Landvedi. Landvedi being Old Norse for land spirits. And so they were able to utilize their relationship with the Landvedi to enact acts of war by bringing weather changes or geographic changes that would then stall the enemy or just run over the enemy, whichever the case. And then if they were to actually involve in combat, they would seem very similar to the berserkers being of a bear. The Úlfhé nars were of the wolf. So they able to channel those animals and obtain some of their skills in combat. So that's where the term Úlfhé nar comes from. So it is Old Norse. So I think we talked the last time about like 4 different languages being on the website.
Yeah, Kelly and I looked at your website and we're like, oh, well, there's good thing there's English because we don't know Danish.
Google Translate, my friend. Google Translate.
Yeah.
So yes, there's like 4, and so some of the terms, and again, the title itself does come from Old Norse.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark, for being on the podcast. We really enjoyed speaking with you and learning about your journey and what you're doing. And it was just really fascinating.
Yeah. If you'd love to come back, we'd love to have you because I even have more questions.
Well, I would be happy to open that up, and I do intend in the near future. We're still working on getting all the pieces together and the parts, but we are looking at doing an interview with the Úlfhé nar and allow folks to go the other way. So I'll do the interviewing and answer all the questions on the air. So nice. We are looking at getting that done, and so that because a lot of people have questions. There's a lot of concern. There's one of the major topics I get hit with all the time is that if you don't do this, it's evil, and you're going to be condemned to hell. I guarantee you, I get at least 3 of those a day. And what people don't understand is that's the practice speaking. That's not the theology. That's not the underlying spirituality of even Christianity. It just that's not what it is. That is the control mechanisms that the early church put in place to make sure they kept customers coming back, for lack of a better word, lack of a better description. So a lot of people look at these other practices and these other understandings as being evil and horrible and dark, and that's just not the case. You talk about magic, everybody says, oh, magic is evil, it's dark. Well, no,
black magic.
Well, technically, and this is the funny thing when I explain to them that, did you know that a prayer is an identical thing to cedar magic? That's exactly right. Worship, another. It's the same thing as Galder magic. It's just rebranded to be used in other terms. So I think what a lot of people don't understand of their religion is how they've been drawn in and almost labeled to a point on the practice and not on the theology itself. And that's I hope I hope my book provides some enlightenment, and that they understand that it's okay to be different. It really is. I mean, and things we need to understand is that spiritual energy that you receive from the universe, if you will, it can't be evil.
Right.
It just can't. All it is power. So it's just like grabbing a 10 or an outlet in your house. It's just power. What you decide to do with it as the issuer or as the receiver of that energy, there's where the evil comes in.
Right.
That's what and so just getting folks to understand that, I think that's been a very, I would say, the most challenging of all the ideologies to get across. Is that, you know, you can't keep looking. You know, I have an old friend, wonderful man, who is a Mongolian shaman, and he has a phrase, and he always uses it every time I talk to him, is, "What are you seeking?" And when I first heard it, I now know what he means. But he said, if you seek, go out and find division, distrust, hate, differences, meanings and reasons for separation, you'll find them. They are out there, man. Our cup runneth over. Yeah. However, if you use that same energy to seek peace and unification, harmony, coexistence, you'll find those things too.
Yes. So
that the question then you have to ask yourself in every engagement we have is, what side are we on? What are we seeking? What is this relationship? What is this event? What side is that on?
Yeah, I like that.
He's a wonderful man. I love him to death. I will be. And of course, everything has to be translated, so it's a slow process sometimes. But
yeah, my Mongolian's rusty.
Yeah. Mine is horrible. It's horrible. So,
Mark, again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to it. I will definitely keep in touch so that we can meet up again, and certainly maybe you guys could help me debut the other direction.
Happy to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. Bless you. May you have peace on your journeys, and may you find all that you seek.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny because now after talking to him, I don't have all these other questions. You know, we were talking about all the different religions and stuff. I think that's interesting. I think I'd love to sit and talk about. I could talk to someone about a religious topic and the history of the religion. I think that's interesting. But I hate sometimes when you want to learn about a religion, it turns into a recruitment.
Yeah.
I don't want to be recruited. I just want knowledge, you know, and he has that knowledge.
I like learning about the indigenous religions more so than, say, the standard religion.
No, that's
right.
True, yeah.
I like learning about the indigenous just because, you know, the practices all over the world are very similar.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about. And they're all very, I want to say more earth, spiritual based. You know, does that make sense? It's not so much heaven.
I think you have a lot more respect for the earth, for everything, because I think they realize that everything is all connected.
Yeah, but yeah,
right.
That's true when you look at them, because you know, certain religions is just they're just focused, like you said, on that religion and nothing outside that scope. You know, whereas a lot of indigenous people, you know, it involves nature and spirituality and medicine and everything, you know. And
it's all connected. The earth, the plants, the water, everything is all connected. So you have respect across the entire spectrum.
Right.
Right.
That's cool. I like that.
You know, and so I like learning about the different indigenous and their practices and their rituals and all that good stuff. Because all religion has rituals.
Yeah, it's true. They all do.
You know, so
some are crazier than others.
Some are crazier than others, but they all have rituals. So
remember, here's a real quick random bullshit. Ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Remember we talked about the one pastor who was sharing a titty with everyone? There you go. That's a crazy ritual.
So for those of you who don't know, there was a video circulating. I think it was on Instagram. Had to be maybe a year ago, where a pastor, a woman pastor at some church, and I don't know where this church was at, what country. It could have been the United States, could have been someplace else.
I want to say Florida for some reason.
She's up, preaching, and she's got breast milk in her breast, and she is letting anybody and everybody come up and suckle the breast milk. And some dude is up there getting it on.
Oh yeah, man.
He was
and then we talked about what would you do if that was your partner. Hey Kelly, I'm gonna go up and get me some of that.
I'm gonna go up and suckle Pastor for a minute. Dude. I'll be back.
Then I have to wonder, what if I'm sitting there, my partner says, "Well, James, I'm gonna go get some." Oh, okay.
I just thought that's a ritual. So, but you're right. That is a
bullshit ritual. See how that all flowed together?
It did. Our website is thatsomecrazyshitpodcast.com. There you can look at our social media. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We are on Twitter. You can look at past episodes. You can look at James's blog, and you can also contact us.
Yep, we look forward to any stories, people.
Yep, any story that anybody wants to share. If you've got what you think is crazy shit and you think that you might want to come on the podcast as a guest, hit us up. We'd love to talk with you, see if it fits our crazy shit criteria. We actually put it into the crazy shit computer. The crazy shit computer pops out, yay, crazy shit, nay, crazy shit. That's how we decide.
That's some crazy shit. And so we do it.
Sometimes it says it's not crazy enough.
No, so we don't do those ones.
Yeah. So anyway, James, my friend, until next time, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, buddy.
I know. Have fun. So next week, then, until then, keep your minds open, people.